I want to teach you how to play jazz standards just from reading a lead sheet, because I think it's hands down the best way to get into jazz piano. This is a lead sheet. It just gives you the chords and the melody, and you use that information to create your own arrangement of the tune. A lead sheet can be interpreted in a million different ways. For example, from this lead sheet, I could play something quite simple, like this. Or I could do something fancy, like this. Or I could go for different moods, like mellow. Or bright. It's this creative freedom that makes playing lead sheets such a great way to get started with jazz. But before we can do all of that fancy stuff, we need to know how to make a simple arrangement of any lead sheet. And for that, we need two skills. One, we need to know how to construct these 7 basic jazz chords, and 2, we need to know how to invert them. So it's not a lot, but it is too much to learn in one go. So today's video is just going to be a quick overview of a 4-part course I'm making, which is designed to help you internalize those 2 skills. Going through this course will teach you how to make a simple arrangement of any lead sheet, and it will prepare you for learning the more advanced techniques that will allow you to make more complicated and more creative arrangements in the future. In stage 1, we'll learn about intervals and how to use them to construct major 7, minor 7 and dominant 7 chords. An interval is the distance between 2 notes. So for example, the space between these 2 notes, that's an interval. Intervals are measured in semitones, which is the distance between 2 notes that are next to each other. So C sharp is a semitone above C, and B is a semitone below C. We just need to know 5 intervals to construct the major, minor and dominant 7 chords. The minor third, which is 3 semitones above the root. The major third, which is 4. The perfect fifth, which is 7. The minor 7th, which is 10 semitones above the root. Though the quickest way to find it is to jump to the root an octave above and then count down 2 semitones. And the major 7th, which is 11 semitones above the root. And again, we find that by jumping to the root 1 octave above and then counting down 1 semitone. Intervals are like little Lego bricks. The order in which you put them together and which ones you choose to leave out or duplicate will dictate the sound of the resulting chord. Knowing your intervals and understanding how they combine lays the groundwork for arranging melodies and voicing chords, which are both key arrangement skills. That's why we learn to construct chords from intervals right from the get-go. With this table, we can figure out which type of 3rd, 5th and 7th we need for each chord. Major 7s have a major 3rd, a 5th and a major 7th. Minor 7s have a minor 3rd, a 5th and a minor 7th. And dominant 7s have a major 3rd, a 5th and a minor 7th. This table and all the chord charts and lead sheets in this video can be found in the description. Before we try putting these chords under a melody, we'll just practice identifying and constructing them by working through this chord chart. Chord symbols come in 2 parts. The first part is the note the chord is built from, which is called the root, and the second part is the type of chord. Major 7s are written with a maj 7 or a delta symbol, which is a little triangle. Minor 7s are written with a minus symbol or a lowercase m followed by a 7, and dominant 7s are just written with a 7. We'll use our left hand to play the chords, keeping our right hand free for the melody later. We'll use a 2-step method to construct and check each chord. Step 1 is construct the chord in the order of root 3rd, 5th, 7th. So my first chord is D minor 7, so the root is D, the 3rd is F, the 5th is A, and the 7th is C. And step 2 is to check the chord in the order of root 3rd, 5th, 7th. So now if I look at my table, I can see that I should have a minor 3rd, which I do. I should have a normal 5th, which I do. And I should have a minor 7th, which I do. Double checking the chords like this helps us to catch our mistakes, which is a really great way to learn, and it solidifies all of those little chord rules in our head. The end goal is to memorize this table, so the more time we spend looking at it, the better. So far, we've been playing our chords in root position. If we learn how to play them in second inversion as well, we can turn this into this. This sounds way smoother and is much easier to play. There are 3 possible inversions for any 4-note chord. There's root position, first inversion, second inversion, and third inversion. But due to the way that jazz chord sequences are written, alternating between root position and second inversion is usually the path of least resistance and the easiest way to play the chords. I've found the other inversions make life harder in a few ways and they bring very little benefit, so I don't think they're worth the trouble at this early stage. Inverting chords can be intimidating, but I've got a really simple 2-step method for figuring out whether to use root position or second inversion on any given chord in a sequence. I'll demonstrate this 2-step method over the first 3 chords from the chord chart that we looked at earlier. We always play the first chord in a sequence in root position. So the first chord here is D-7, so let's play that in root position. Now we're going to use the steps to figure out which position to use for the next chord. Step 1, place the second finger or pinky on the nearest root for the next chord. Use whichever is closer. So the next chord is G-7 and there's a G right here. The second finger is closer, so we're going to place the second finger on the G. Step 2, build the rest of the chord from this position in the order of 3rd, 5th, 7th. My second finger is glued to this G. If I build the chord around that, the major 3rd has to go here, the 5th has to go down here, and the minor 7th has to go in the middle. And now we have a second inversion position for G7. Let's repeat the steps to find the closest position for the next chord, C major 7. So, step 1, place the second finger or pinky on the nearest root for the next chord, whichever is closer. This time we have 2 Cs to choose from, one at the top and one at the bottom. The pinky is closer to the bottom C than the second finger is to the top C, so we'll place the pinky on the bottom C. Step 2, build the rest of the chord from this position in the order of 3rd, 5th, 7th. Again, my pinky is glued to this C, so I build the chord from here, 3rd, 5th, 7th. This simple method works because using the pinky or the second finger to play the root will always force us into root position or second inversion. We'll work through this chord chart again, this time repeating the steps above to figure out whether to use root position or second inversion for every single chord. Again, we'll check every chord after we've made it, so that we spend as much time as possible solidifying all those rules in our head. At this point, we should be pretty comfortable constructing major 7s, minor 7s and dominant 7s and inverting them. We can now use the knowledge that we've built to play a jazz standard just from reading a lead sheet. For students with a real book, which is a compendium of jazz standards, all of which are written as lead sheets, I'd recommend learning tune-up at this stage. If you don't have a real book, here's a tune that I wrote which is loosely based on tune-up. We'll play the chords with our left hand, using the inverting method to find the closest position for each chord, and we'll play the melody with our right hand, an octave higher than written, so our hands don't bump into each other. And then it's on to stage 3, where we'll learn to construct a minor 7 flat 5 chord, which is also known as a half diminished chord. A minor 7 flat 5 is literally a minor 7 chord with a flattened 5th. To flatten the 5th, we just lower it by a semitone. So here's a C minor 7 chord, and if I lower the 5th by a semitone, this is now a C minor 7 flat 5. The minor 7 flat 5 is a very common chord in jazz and a regular point of confusion for novice jazz pianists, which is why we tackle it separately. Minor 7 flat 5s are notated literally like this, or with this slashed O symbol. To practice this chord, we'll once again work through a chord chart, again inverting the chords and checking each chord once we've constructed it. And then we should be ready to use a minor 7 flat 5 on a tune. If you've got a real book, you can have a go at Autumn Leaves at this stage, which is a classic beginner tune that features a minor 7 flat 5 chord. And if you don't have a real book, here's a tune that I wrote for this stage, has a minor 7 flat 5 and subs in for Autumn Leaves. By the time we've got to stage 4, we've already done the vast majority of the work. Working through all those chord sheets and playing those tunes will have given us a chance to practice the fundamental skills of constructing and inverting chords. So now that we've got a solid foundation, we can just bolt stuff on to what we already know. So it's time to tackle the last three chords: diminished sevens, major sixes, and minor sixes. Diminished sevens have a minor third, a flattened fifth, so we'll lower our fifth by one semitone, and a flattened minor seventh, so we'll lower the minor seventh by a semitone as well. For the major six and minor six chords, we need to learn a new interval, the major sixth. The major sixth is 9 semitones above the root, and we find it by jumping up to the root an octave above and then counting down 3. Major six chords have a major third, a fifth, and a major sixth, and minor six chords have a minor third, a fifth, and a minor sixth. Again, before we use these chords on a tune, we'll spend a bit of time constructing and inverting them by working through this chord chart. Diminished 7 chords are notated with a lowercase o followed by a 7. Major 6 chords are just notated with a 6, and minor 6 chords are notated with a minor symbol or a lowercase m followed by a 6. And then we're ready for the final tune. If you've got a real book, All of You is a great tune which features all the basic chords, and if you don't have a real book, here's the tune that I wrote, which again features all the basic chords, giving you a chance to use everything you've learned so far. And that's it, we're done. You can now create a simple arrangement for any lead sheet that you'd like to play. There are still some chords that you'll see that you won't be familiar with, but don't panic because they can all be substituted for one of the chords that we've learnt today. Here's a little chart which shows you which chord to swap in when you see a symbol that you don't recognise. This course will also give you a really solid foundation in jazz chords, which will open the door to learning some more advanced arrangement techniques, such as integrating the melody into the chord, filling up space between the melody, and adding extensions and colour to the chord.